Hi everybody, so today we are going to be doing a basic event makeup application. I started by letting her apply a lip mask, which is going to help to lock in hydration on the lips the whole time we're doing the face. Then I sprayed some toner. This is a Mario Badescu priming water, and this is going to apply some moisture to the skin so that the Mario Badescu moisturizer that I'm using right now will fully absorb and create a protective layer for the rest of the skin as we apply the makeup on top so that there's no damage to the skin whatsoever. Now I'm going to apply a primer, so I'm using a small brush and a pore filling primer that is not silicone based, and this is going to help to blur all of her pores and help to give me a nice flat canvas to work with for the rest of the products on top. Now I'm applying a color correcting concealer, so I am using a light mint green shade in order to conceal all of the deep redness that she has surrounding any blemishes as well as any rosacea that peeks through. And you can see that I'm concentrating this color over those areas. We're going to let it dry down and completely set before we apply foundation or concealer over top of it, just to make sure that the green doesn't infiltrate the color of the foundation. But this is going to be really nice to cancel out that redness. And now I'm just buffing all of that out, and then I'm applying the foundation. So I used the Cover FX Power Play. I like that for oily, acne prone skin like hers. It gives me a really nice full coverage and dries down like a semi-matte finish. Now with the synthetic brush, which is ideal for cream products to the skin, we're going to apply the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer. I am using a shade that is pretty much exactly the same shade as her foundation as to conceal any blemishes and further cover up any of those areas that we color corrected without highlighting them or bringing attention to them. The Tarte Shape Tape is very high coverage, so it's going to add that next layer of coverage that I need to make sure that none of her redness or discoloration pops through. And then we're going to make sure to set all of that down in the next step. Pay attention here to where I'm applying the concealer. You can see I'm slightly dragging it from her outer lash line out towards her temple and in the exact same angle underneath her lower lip, and then blending it out very, very gently with my finger. Clean hands, of course, just tapping it out. Or you can use a makeup sponge. In this case, I wanted to show you guys how to do basically an entire look without makeup sponges because they can tend to be not very cost effective for makeup kits and things of that nature. But this application of the concealer is really going to help to lift her face and give the illusion that the eyes and the corners of the mouth are drawn up and pulling out back towards the hairline, if that makes any sense, to make sure that she looks lifted and youthful. And then we're going to set the concealer. Here I'm using the Lancome Translucent Setting Powder. Any translucent setting powder will work, and I'm using a small fluffy setting brush, and this is going to allow me to concentrate the translucent powder on those areas where I applied a lot of concealer. Any areas where you have multiple layers of coverage, they are going to be the first areas to crease, as well as when you've applied concealer or foundation in the areas where they have a lot of movement, such as the smile lines, the under eye wrinkles, sort of the crow's feet area. We need to set all of that first. And then I'm using a small amount of setting powder to go all over the face and just make sure to set down all of the areas that I applied any liquid product. So this is going to make sure that it does not slip and slide. So here I am contouring, and the act of contouring is basically using a cool tone shade to recede any areas that you do not want to draw attention to. So we're being very strategic as to where we apply the contour. I'm doing it in the hollows of her cheekbones, up along her hairline, and underneath her lower jawline. And this is really going to make sure that those areas look chiseled. Now, after I finish contouring, I want to clean up my edges in case you got a little bit too crazy blending out the contour from before, and we need to make sure that she has a nice clean edge so that the contour isn't muddy or dragged down onto the jawline. I'm stamping a dry beauty blender or any kind of makeup sponge into a translucent setting powder, the same one that I used to set the concealer, and I am stamping that underneath the contour. You can see too now that I'm going in and contouring the nose while that sits on her jawline. I'm going to use a very, very small, stiff, fluffy brush and a very small amount of contour, and I'm going to trace perfectly straight lines across the bridge of her nose on both sides, and I'm going to very carefully buff those lines out. I don't want to muddy them up. I don't want to bring them up onto the bridge of the nose or down too far towards the cheek so that you kind of lose that shape. So I'm going to be very strategic about how I'm blending it out and buff a little bit underneath the nose as well to enhance the lift of the tip of her nose. Then I'm going to take some brightening powder or some more translucent powder, and I'm just making sure to clean up those edges so that I don't have any contour falling down towards the cheeks. Now I'm going in and doing blush. So I used a Tarte blush, a warm toned rosy shade, and I'm going to apply this slightly on the apples of her cheeks, but more so drifting up along her cheekbone and up towards her temples. This gives a really nice lifted effect that streamlines the cheeks after we've done the contour. And now you can see I'm doing what I call like an illuminating blush topper. This is from MAC. It's a illuminizing skin finish, and this is like a pink rose gold tone skin topper that is going to be a very subtle glow from within type of highlighter, and I'm going to apply this on all of the high points of her face. Now I'm going into brows. So first I like to go ahead and outline the brows using a micro brow pencil. This is the one from Morphe. Every single time I make a couple strokes, I'm going to make sure to blend it out with the other side of the tool there, which is a spoolie. And this is going to ensure that you have no harsh lines and everything looks super streamlined. We're basically just trying to lay out an outline and a base color here throughout the eyebrows. So I can now go in after this pencil is done and do a little bit of a brow powder on a flat definer brush and add even more pigment to that outer third or that tail end of the eyebrow. because that's where we should be concentrating a majority of the pigment. And then as you go forward to the front of the brow, it should be really nice and subtle up in the front so that you don't get that angry brow look. Now this part is pretty simple, but I'm using a very, very, very small amount of concealer on a flat definer brush, and I'm cleaning up the edges of the eyebrow. This is just going to basically fix anything that was kind of out of place, out of line, and it's going to make sure that I don't disturb the makeup underneath. I'm also going to apply a little bit of a brow gel, which will be the next step that you'll see, and this is going to brush the hairs exactly in the direction that I want them. You always want to be brushing up and over, out towards the temple, and that's going to give you a fluffier, more natural looking brow. Now I'm going to finish the other eyebrow off of camera, and we're going to start with her eyes. So I'm using a very small fluffy brush, and I'm buffing in her transition shade. I am going really heavy with the transition shade, which is something I don't typically do, but for her I wanted to enhance sort of like the depth of her eye, and by going in with a highly pigmented transition shade I can do that. But there's absolutely going to be no shortage of blending. So I'm going to take a clean, larger fluffy brush, and I'm going to blend, doing windshield wiper motions, sort of flicking that shadow out towards her temple as well, which is going to elongate the eye and draw them further apart. I'm going to buff until I have no harsh lines at all. And now I'm taking that same small fluffy brush from the beginning, and I'm going to apply a darker brown shade only to the outer third, and I'm going to flick it out towards the temple like I did with the transition shade. This is going to give a very nice, slight, smoky effect without completely overtaking the eye in any black or dark tones that could ruin it. And this is going to, again, elongate the eye and draw it outwards and give some depth and drama to the outer corners. And then I'm going to do the opposite to the inner corner using lighter shades to open up her eye. You can see here again that I'm making sure everything is very, very blended out by using a clean, larger, fluffy brush to buff out any harsh lines. Now I'm going to define the eyes even more, and I'm going to use the shadow liner effect. So I'm going to kind of follow that winged out shape that I did with the shadows earlier on, and I'm going to take a flat definer brush, very similar to the one I used for the brows, and I'm going to stamp on and wing out a black eyeshadow. This is going to stay very, very close to her lash line in order to enhance the depth and the darkness of her lash line, but it's going to be sort of smoked out like I'm doing here, taking a small fluffy brush and gently feathering out the edges of it so it doesn't look super harsh. I'm going to do it to the other eye, and then she wanted a more defined wing, so I'm going to actually go in with a liquid eyeliner on top of that in black, and I'm going to further kind of sharpen and define that wing shape. Now just to kind of tie everything together, I'm taking a very light bone shade on a small fluffy brush, and I'm applying this to all of the blank space basically that we didn't fill with the shadow earlier. This is going to kind of round out the eye, make them look very large and round, and then it's going to kind of continue to buff out those edges, any harsh lines that we had had from before. I wanted to keep this a pretty matte eye. I didn't want to go in with any shimmers other than like the highlights on the inner corner and the brow bone, so this was really nice to kind of tie everything up. Now, as you're seeing me do here, everything that we do up top, we must do on the bottom. So I'm taking that transition shade that I had up top, mixed with a very small amount of that outer corner darker matte shade, and I'm buffing that underneath her lash line. This is going to, again, round out the eyes and make sure to create a cohesive look that doesn't just stop at the upper lash line and sort of look blank on the lower lash line. Buffing a very small amount of it under the lower lash line is going to define those lower lashes and give a complete look to the eyeshadow. Now I'm going to take a small amount of a mascara. You guys would be using disposable mascaras. This is her personal mascara, so I'm just going in with the wand. But you're basically going to very gently have them look up and wiggle it into their lower lashes. Now I'm going in and lining the lips in preparation for the lipstick I'm going to be using in a second. I'm using a shade that is only a couple shades darker than her skin tone, and this varies. It depends on if they want a colored lip or a nude lip. We were going to go with a nude to enhance the eyes even more. So I basically traced her exact lip shape, but slightly, just very, very slightly dragged it above her natural lip line in the center of the lower lip, as well as the outer edges of the upper lip. And now I'm stamping on, using a lip brush, I'm stamping on a liquid lipstick that's kind of the same color as the lip liner, but just slightly lighter. And this is going to give that bulletproof color that's going to last all day. But I'm also going to stamp on a gloss over top of it to give a more photogenic look to the lips so that they don't look too dehydrated. And now I'm just spraying her down and setting everything in place.